Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of We Watch Shudder. I am one of your co-hosts. My name is JD, and who's here with me?
It's Michelle.
It's Michelle. You guys know what we do here. We watch Shudder. It's right there in the name. Specifically, every week, we take a look at the new original and or exclusive Shudder release. They've been doing one a week for a while now, and that's what we're focusing on here. They got a ton of other content on there that's not original and exclusive that's worth your time as well. But yeah, that's what we're here to do today. There's another new one today. Michelle, what is it that we're talking about?
We're going to watch The Sadness, which is appropriate for two people with clinical depression.
Ah, I see what you did there.
Yeah, but it has nothing to do with clinical depression.
No,
Very
it
disappointed
really
in
doesn't.
the name.
It really doesn't. We'll talk about that name factor here in a little while, but as we do, I am just going to read to everyone the description of The Sadness that you can find right here today on the official Shudder website. Here is what it says. When a virus spontaneously mutates, it gives rise to a mind-altering plague. The streets erupt into violence and depravity as those infected are driven to enact the most cruel and ghastly things they can think of. Murder, torture, rape, and mutilation are only the beginning. A young couple is pushed to the limits of sanity as they try to reunite amid the chaos. The age of civility and order is no more. There is only The Sadness, a Shudder original. And I must immediately point out that I think for sure the first time in We Watch Shudder podcast history, this description comes with a special disclaimer. It says, note, The Sadness contains graphic and extreme violence and gore, as well as brief strobe effects in the end credits. That's what's on tap here today. Michelle, hit us with your spoiler-free thoughts on The Sadness.
Okay, so name aside, because I don't like the name of this film.
I didn't either. We'll get into that when we break it down, for sure.
Let's just separate the name from the movie. So The Sadness, it is about a virus called Alvin. So they are just messing up all sorts of naming conventions in this one. And when it's a movie based on this idea that there's some sort of virus that mutates your mind and makes you do horrific things, there are one of two directions that movie can go. We can go the correct way, like The Crazies, and do it very well. Or we can do The Happening, M. Night Shyamalan style, and it can just be wacky and not watchable. This movie, I am delighted to announce, it went, you know what? We know what you want to see. Blood geysers, crazy, horrific deaths, things that make you look away from the screen several times throughout the movie. This was an absolute masterpiece. I am delighted. I am rarely delighted. And you know what? I'm going to do it. This is my first 5-star movie on this show.
Woo! 5 skulls for The Sadness from Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
That is high praise. The highest of praise.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing I have to say about The Sadness. I did enjoy this movie. I don't know. This movie definitely goes to some places that are a little past my line, but it balanced them with a lot of things I really enjoyed. I can't, just because of my personal taste, I can't go the full 5 skulls on it because, there are parts of this that I really
rough.
It's rough. It's real rough.
I don't think this is one everybody will enjoy. Right. I will throw that disclaimer out there.
But I've already expressed to some other people, it definitely balances that roughness, I think, with a little bit more thought and story than you get with certain movies that are pure exploitation. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a very exploitational film, but it does enough other things that, like, it doesn't get into that territory of, like, like a Cannibal Holocaust or a Human Centipede 2 that's just like repulsivity for its own sake. And really trying to put, I mean, it definitely tries to push boundaries, but it tries to push those boundaries with a different tone than certain other movies, and I think that's what made me able to enjoy it more, even though there are, like I said, definitely things that I did not care for. I'm going to go 4 skulls on this one, which gives us a split of 4.5, which I think makes this, at least in the episodes we've released so far, our highest average score. Is that correct?
Correct. It gets 4.5 average skulls. I gave it 5. You gave it 4, which makes it the highest of the released episodes.
Should express to you that this movie is entirely in Mandarin Chinese. And it does come with subtitles. I will also ensure you that when you're watching it on Shudder and you try to turn the subtitles on and it tells you there are no subtitles available for this film to turn on, there are absolutely subtitles and they must just be built into the movie. So don't worry about that. I got real panicky when I started watching this movie. I was like, what do you mean I'm going to have to watch the whole thing in Mandarin? I
wished you had to do that, though. I really wish. And then I would have been like, there's subtitles, right? Like, I wish you had to watch this without knowing any of the language.
Right. Side note, also, it occurs to me that I said Mandarin Chinese earlier, and I don't know if that's the correct way to refer to that. I know the movie takes place in Taiwan. I may have been mistaken there, so please forgive me if I misspoke in any way there, if you know anything about that situation. Anyway, clearly we loved the sadness overall. We're going to talk about it in great detail here now. If you want to go see the movie before we break it apart and spoil everything, this is where you're going to want to do that. Hit that pause button right. Hey friends, just a quick note. That disclaimer from the Shudder website was no joke. This movie is especially brutal, especially aggressively violent, and contains some pretty rough depictions of sexual violence as well. We want to make sure you're aware of that in case you were going to check out the movie before listening to the rest of this, and also simply just before listening to the rest of this. It's something that you definitely need to know before going into this film. So keep that in mind. On to our thoughts. Now. All right, Michelle, I'm just going to let you go. Tell us all about the sadness. And, well, I tell you what, let's actually start here. The title, I'm still not, like, okay, there's this very brief subplot where apparently there's this element of the experience of being infected with this virus where you get a little sad and you cry a little bit. And they like vaguely, very briefly try to offer like a token explanation. Makes no sense at all. I still don't understand really where it even came from. Did you have any grasp at all on why this movie is called The Sadness?
I am thinking it is probably more nuanced language that is lost in translation, because if it is not, it is very dumb. And I feel like this movie is too good to just be very dumb.
Well, here's the thing is, while the movie was produced in Taiwan and stars Taiwanese actors, the movie was written and directed by a Canadian fella. That Rob Jabaz is a Canadian filmmaker. So I don't know. Maybe it's a translation issue. Maybe it's not. But yeah, the name. Don't judge anything about this by the name. You don't have time for sadness in this movie.
I mean, I have been depressed a lot, and I have never been as active as these people have during those episodes. So they're getting a lot accomplished.
For sure. So take us through the sadness. Tell us about what you loved about this movie.
So immediately it is just a high quality film, which is very good. You can tell like this was made with a lot of love. It's shot correctly. It's good acting. Everything is just like, it's very high quality in all the like checks all the basic boxes. And then there's kind of like this subtlety in the very beginning that you usually see with a lot of like zombie type movies where things are going kind of wrong. The main characters have a hint that something's going wrong. But then when things get wild, they get wild abruptly. And this movie starts hardcore. The very first big thing that happens is the guy's face gets covered in oil and then ripped off. Yeah. Like when that happened, I was like, okay, this movie like tells you immediately, like, this is what we're going for. And I just really appreciated that it was a movie that talked about, you know, being kind of hardcore in the description, and then it actually lived up to that.
Yeah,
that blood geyser in the subway, I was like, yes.
When the guy gets stabbed in the neck, and it's so absurdly unrealistic, of course.
Yep.
But it's like there is so much blood in this movie, and every open wound is not just a river; it's an active spurting fountain of blood. It's a mess, but yeah. Like 15 minutes roughly is where that moment hits. And like you said, there are little hints that something is starting to happen. He sees the lady over on the other roof who appears to be covered in blood. And then they're driving to the lady's work or whatever, taking her to the train station. And they drive past that apparent crime scene with all the blood. But when that dude got whacked in the face with that French fry bucket and his face just started bubble melting, and then she reaches up and just claws his fucking face off, I was like, oh shit, we are off to the races.
I think the absurdity of the violence is why I enjoyed it, because it's not realistic. Like, it's so absurd that it's just like, this is ridiculous. Okay, I'm here. Like, it's so much blood when there's people just getting stabbed left and right on the subway that it doesn't actually make you feel the sadness for these people. You're just like, this is ridiculous, but it's done in such like a fun, ridiculous way. Like the guy who gets barbed wire to his dick and says, why did you stop them? I was about to explode, or whatever.
What he said was, I was about to shoot my load. I remember that specifically.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was
it's so ridiculous.
And as long as we've hit that note here, that is one thing that I do want to hasten to say is this movie, it does get into some elements of sexual violence.
It does.
A little, I can't be the kind of person, like, because I very vocally enjoy certain movies that explore those territories. I definitely understand why that's not someplace a lot of people always want to go. But it's, again, they do it in such a way where there is a level of absurd extremity to it, if that makes sense. It's they're not trying to make this as realistic and intense as, say, the sexual violence in a movie like Gaspar Noé's Irreversible, or something like that. You know, it's but oh man, when. Like the book ending of that lady with her eye getting plucked out, and then
that was one of the that's up there in like scenes I've had a hard time watching. Like even with the absurdity of it, like it was a lot.
It was very, very rough. But like I said, again, it's certainly not going to be palatable for everyone. And you definitely deserve to be warned about that happening. I may have to drop, in fact, now that I think about it, a warning on the early portion of this before we come in, just fair. To let people know that before they go watch the movie, they need to understand that it's fucking intense and it might be triggering for some people.
Too much. Yeah. It would absolutely. This is not like, if you don't like horror movies, do not watch this movie.
Right.
Do not watch this movie. If you don't like horror at all, do not start with this movie.
Yeah, definitely. Do not. This is for experienced, committed horror fans. I do feel that there were a lot of elements of the violence in this one that I thought were very reminiscent of Takashi Miike's Ichi the Killer, in that there, like, a lot of the violence in that movie is like this. It's very absurdly extreme with the arterial spray and the geysers of blood. But there are also moments in that movie, and I felt moments in this movie, where that tone does shift a little bit into a little bit more aggressive and serious violence, and that scene is one in particular. And I feel like maybe they're trying to draw some sort of social commentary on those things based on who the victims are in those moments. Trying to make, for example, like I felt like a lot of the violence against the female characters in this movie was a little bit more serious in tone. That might have just been how I was reading it because of my impressions. But no, it's and then of course we get into the bit with the babies, and that's, I mean, we've talked about that with me and babies, and that is definitely for me the absolute bridge too far in this movie. That's the kind of thing to me that no matter how good the rest of your movie is, if you're doing violence against infants, I'm out for at least a little while. So the movie did lose me in that sequence for a period of time. But oh fuck.
I got to comment on your female thing, because I kind of agree with you. Like the violence, the man-on-man violence was definitely more like, this is such a weird thing to say, but it was fun compared to like the violence that was committed like man against woman was like very sexual, very like horrifying, a lot more like why do men get to like have barbed wire on their dick, whereas like the clitoris action, come on, like represent. I was so upset. I was like, why are all the men having fun in this movie and women are just getting tortured? But I'm kind of used to that from like horror movie standpoint.
And I feel like that's I don't know, maybe it's you know, like saying something about how we as a culture view violence, maybe, or just trying to drive that home a little bit more. And even to the extent that like there's even sexual violence against male characters in the movie, but none of it plays as extremely or as brutally as at least again to my experience, all the violence against the female characters seemed a little bit more intense. And
that's actually a big part of why I was kind of so into this movie, because it wasn't even the physical violence, it was horrifying the things that they were saying to these people. And like the
I was hoping we would get to that.
Like the violence for me was like, oh, that's fun, like that's like a lot of gore to the point where it's absurd and I don't have to like look away. It's just like, oh man, that's kind of silly. But it was actually scary, like the things that they were saying, and the idea of like this man who's kind of an incel on the subway now has this virus that makes him incredibly violent, and now he's after you forever.
The movie,
that is so scary.
The movie definitely had it had some things to say about a few different things, and one of them is it definitely had some things to say about toxic male sexual attitudes. Absolutely. There are some repulsive lines of dialogue spoken in this film to true horrific effect. Like, I don't want anybody to, like, I can't say I enjoyed this movie, right? That's not the right word for it. It's an experience I'm glad I had and I appreciate, but oh man, did I feel like I wanted to take a bath when I was done. Like,
I was giggling throughout it. We're different people.
It's a tough movie. There are other elements though. I like the very obvious, clear, direct lampooning of the American response to the COVID-19 pandemic throughout, to the extent that the press conference for their president, the backdrop is very clearly a mock-up to make it look very similar to the backdrop they use for American presidential press conferences. I don't know if that's actually what it looks like there or if it was a deliberate parody. Either way, it was hilarious. That scene also where the general goes crazy during the press conference and jams that grenade. That's a perfect example of what we were talking about like there's sort of this silliness of the man-on-man violence, but making you confront the aggressive nature of, because I think like a certain amount of those attitudes, like, oh, that whole boys will be boys kind of thing, comes from or at least is rooted in part in like the roughhousing of boys with boys, you know, and then like just that idea getting transposed. And this doesn't allow you to see the violence against women the way it allows you to see the violence against men. It makes you take a stronger look at that, I think. And I don't mean to harp on that like a broken record, but I really appreciated that element of the film. Again, not enjoyed it by any means, but yeah, it's wild. And yeah, so they shoved the grenade in the dude's face and his head explodes in the best head explosion I've seen since Scanners.
I thought of Scanners too.
yeah. Well, the Scanners is the landmark of all head explosions, right?
Scanners just came out on Shudder again. Do you think that it was because of this movie?
No, I doubt it. But I mean, you never can. I mean,
this is an original. If they're like, hey, they're going to want to watch Scanners after this, because now I want to go watch Scanners, and I know it's on Shudder right now. So awesome. I'm like, smart.
Yeah. So what else? Tell us more about The Sadness, Michelle. What else do you got to say about this movie?
What was your hardest part to watch? Was it the fingers or was it the babies?
The baby thing.
Okay.
Yeah. That was, and that's always for me going to be the roughest thing. And yeah, but the fingers, when you're talking about the bit where he cuts the fingers off?
Yeah, because I watched it, I went, oh no, Janie's not gonna like that.
No, that was rough. That was real rough. It's oh god, yeah, it was I watched this movie on my phone at my desk at work today.
Oh no, that's a bad choice.
Oh, it was. I was looking over my shoulder. I was like, oh my God, I'm hoping my boss doesn't happen over by here right in the middle of one of these sequences. It was aggressive. But if you're able to stomach this sort of thing, it's definitely a better film than a lot of movies that do this same sort of thing, I think, is what we're ultimately coming to.
Yeah, are there many Mandarin horror movies? I was trying to find...
I don't know.
Because I was trying to see if there were a ton, and I was looking through the list, and I only saw one on Google that I'd ever heard of. So I'm kind of excited to go explore Mandarin, like, movies a little bit more. I know, like, South Korea makes a lot of good stuff. There's clearly a lot of good Japanese. I don't know what we really have from China so much, and I kind of want to go spend the next month like exploring Chinese horror a little bit more.
As it turns out, IMDb has a list of 315 horror titles produced in Taiwan. So
I will have them watched within the next week, and I will have an essay written.
I will not be surprised in the least.
I'm really gonna go check out that list though, because that was one thing when I was watching this. I was like, I might have been sleeping on Chinese horror, because I know I watch out for Korean and Japanese, and I can't really think of a lot of Chinese movies, especially in Mandarin. I know the distinction between Mandarin and Cantonese because of Wayne's World. That's all I know about.
Yes.
Actually, yeah. So, but I'm definitely gonna go check out a little bit more, because I'm excited to see what else, because this can't be the first good Chinese horror movie. It's too good. There has to be other stuff out there, and I don't think I've explored it enough.
Yeah, it was real intense.
I loved it.
Definitely check it out. If you've got a strong stomach, it's grand guignol to the nth degree. And it's also true horror in the sense that you will turn away on at least a couple of occasions.
Oh,
if you,
absolutely.
if you don't, you might not be human. So
yeah, no, it's aggressive and fun, and made me laugh, and then horrified, and then I laughed some more, and then I was just truly, truly horrified. I love this kind of movie.
As a final point, the picture on the profile page for the movie on the Shudder website has a quote that also appeared in one of the Red Band trailers, and the quote is simply, the most violent and depraved zombie movie ever made. And I mean, I guess there is a possibility there's something out there that I haven't seen that tops it, but I don't know. It's fucking intense.
I loved it.
Yeah, so if you go check it out, guys. So if I don't stop now, I'm just gonna keep broken recording how awesome this fucking movie is. So,
but you did not enjoy it. It's just very good.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I loved it.
I
loved it so much.
enjoyed
I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch it multiple times.
Yeah.
This is gonna be one that like I'm gonna make children watch if I ever babysit them. I'm kidding. I have friends who actually like let me babysit their children because I guess I'm good with them. I won't actually make your tiny little tot, who I love and adore, watch this terrifying movie.
Oh, all right. Well,
it's so good.
I'm just gonna end right there. Say goodnight, Michelle.
Good night, Michelle.